Good morning, Brian Barrett.
Hi, Brian. Start in a couple minutes here. Just gonna give everyone a couple of minutes.
All right. What the hell?
All right. Good morning. It is 10:02 a.m. This is the second budget work session for the Smithfield Township Board of Supervisors. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America, to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Members present, Chairman Jacob Pride here, Vice Chair Robert Levenheim, Supervisor Brian Barrett via Zoom. We have our Budget and Finance Manager, Lucas DiBartolo, our Treasurer, Frank Cefali, and our Township Manager, Julia Heilica. We're also joined in person by one of our auditors, Vicky Osgun. So today we are going to go over recommendations prepared by the Budget and Finance Manager for our 2023 budget. I'm going to let Lucas detail his proposals. I know we all got them yesterday, so now we have the chance to go through that, and then we can go from there.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. I hope to take the time today to go through all our documents here, go through my reasoning, the supporting documents for kind of what data I gathered, review the budget, and then determine what we can do or what we cannot do, and also what I found we can do or not do. I have drafted a balanced budget for our review, so it is in balance as we speak. What we're looking at. We know that our expenses have increased repeatedly, especially in the past year due to inflation. A large increase is again expected in our expenses and not in our revenues. If nothing changes for the next year, between 5% and 20% increases on various line items, such as 20% increase in the Monterey County Control Center, 7.5% increase in our insurance, and a variety of other accounts that I budgeted for conservative increases in costs. So I want to start with taking a glance at the attached documents. So it's the top page is fund balances. So just to go through those additional documents before we take a glance at the budget. Again, I used these documents to influence the budget that I created. So the fund balances page, also I do want to comment that it would be great to save any discussions on specific line items or anything like that until the end. But if there's any questions as I'm going through what I'm talking about, please do stop me and I will clarify. So the fund balances sheet here we're looking at, these are the estimated fund balances that we're going to have in our accounts at the end of the year, this year, to show what we're working with, what we're starting with. About $1.5 million in the ESSA account, $1.4 million in the People Security account that was set aside for our bond payment. Now, it wasn't, of course, legally set aside or reserved for our bond payment, but that was the expectation of the board, in previous discussions from I've been told of what that was meant for. Then we have $684,000 left of the American Rescue Plan Fund for a total of $3.7 million in total, fund balances that we're starting with. My plan in the budget that we'll see, $600,000 we are setting aside and pretending it does not exist. The $600,000 is 3 months worth of our township expenses, estimated for the past few years, averages out to about $200,000 a month. So setting that $600,000 aside is our rainy day operating reserve for if something goes wrong. If, for instance, COVID would be an example. We don't want to touch that money. We want to pretend that money doesn't exist. And we don't want to use that to fill any gaps or anything like that. We will see in the budgets we look at that I move over $2.7 million into various accounts. It's all passed through either for capital expenses or for paying off our bond. So we will go over that. And then it does give us a remainder that we still have technically available in our fund balance to use for other items. Going on to page 2, the capital grants. These are the items that the supervisors went over and ranked at the previous budget meeting. Radios was already something that was agreed upon previously to be taken out of the ARP fund, so that's included in this list here. This is all to come out of our new capital/grants fund, capital improvement/grants fund. So the only thing I did remove based on its score was the ash tree removal. Due to the low score of that, everyone voted a 3 on that. I removed that from next year's budget. And that gives us $506,500 worth of capital improvements. That all is coming out of the fund balance in my budget. That is not coming out of tax increases or anything else. That is all coming out of the money we already have. Going on to the next page, you'll see there is 2022 paving estimated money that we put towards paving in 2022. 2023, we're estimating to put the same amount of dollars towards paving. There was a request by Ed for additional funding for paving, but without further increases, I could not find an easy way to fit that into the budget. So I kept it, at the same. Moving on to the next page. The next page is discussing our tax rate and how that compares. So just for everyone's knowledge, how we compare as a township to other townships. So as you can see, we rank with 0.8 mils being our current property tax rate. We rank very low on the list. Out of all the townships, we are 12th place out of the 16 townships, and we are also have a lower rate than the 4 boroughs, which have very high millage rates. The median township tax rate is 1.736 mils. The next page, we're looking at an amusement admissions tax estimate from Berkheimer. I had reached out to James Hunt as I had mentioned at the previous budget meeting, and he was able to quickly get back to me, which was very appreciated. So he estimated that an amusement tax, this is something that many other townships implement. It's one of the only methods we have of kind of outsourcing our taxes. It's the ability to tax events or concerts, or if we had a water park, it would be a water park, but of course we don't have that, but we do have golf courses. And what this does is it allows a small tax on those amenities that we're not taxing generally most of the people who live here. You're not taxing their homes or anything like that. You're taxing the people that come here for these amenities, to play golf or to go to a concert or something like that. So based on that, James had given an estimate of about $50,000 to $60,000 that we would be able to collect if the township implements an amusement tax. And he did provide me a spreadsheet as well, which we can look at the following page. The spreadsheet discusses, basically there's not a whole lot of amenities in Smithfield Township that are considered amusements, but it does tax, specifically the majority of the funds are coming from the golf courses in Smithfield Township. It's a 5% fee that's placed on the greens. It's only 40% of the greens is fees are taxable, and that 5% fee would come to us. So he estimates about $60,000. This tax is something that I do recommend implementing due to the ability to prevent, it's something that helps prevent the further increases of property taxes, by outsourcing these taxes a little bit. So I will go on to the next page as we discuss this. This next page here, this is a flat business privilege tax. This is not something that I'm recommending, but James did give me an estimate on this as well, so I wanted to share it with everyone. This is a flat business tax on all businesses within the township. So whether you're a restaurant or a self-employed individual, things that aren't being taxed under the amusement tax, they would be subject to this flat rate tax, unless you earn less than $25,000 per year in your business. Some other townships have implemented this, but not in Monroe County, and it would only bring in $16,000 to $17,000 for our township. So I think due to the perception of charging a flat tax on all businesses and all self-employed individuals, and you can't exclude anyone, I would not recommend this because it's not going to bring the township very much revenue. And we have other ways of taxing that might be more beneficial and not hurt businesses. But I did want to share that estimate with everyone. Not to confuse this flat business privilege tax with the local service tax. All individuals that work in the township do pay that local service tax, $2 per payroll, $52 a year. All townships have that. This is separate from that. This is a separate, tax on businesses that I'm not recommending. So in our budget, when we glance at that, we're going to see, there's nothing that, there's no wiggle room in our budget to, pull money from somewhere else. Pulling money from our fund balance to cover, structural costs is not a good idea. We want to have a balanced budget and then, pay for capital improvements out of our fund balance if we want, which we are doing, and that is my plan here. But structurally, we want to make sure we're covering all of our costs. Otherwise, we are digging ourselves a hole that requires fixing in the future. So how to raise funds? Well, the median township tax rate is 1.736%. Middle Smithfield, for instance, is at 1.75%. Or sorry, 1.75 mils. Median tax rate being 1.736 mils, not percent. The proposed rate that I am proposing we increase to, it's a 25% increase to 1 mil. This, I will clarify, is long-term not enough. This is not enough of an increase, but looking with what we have to create a balanced budget this year, just for this year, I know it's a large enough increase already. Our current rate is 0.8 mils. This is lower than 11 of the 16 other townships in Monroe and lower than all 4 boroughs. Less than half the median tax rate. We're really trying to get by on a very thin budget here. And I know as Robert would say, if we're acting like a business, we can't charge, we can't expect to provide market rate services if we're not charging, similar to market rate costs. The proposed rate I have is 1 mil. That is still lower than 11 out of the 16 townships and lower than all 4 boroughs. We're not changing our ranking of taxes. It might seem like a large increase for us, but in the reality of what all the other townships, our millage rates are, our millage rate is extremely low, unfortunately. So this increase would bring us an extra $125,000. Accounting for 7% uncollectible, based on research, for the past 5 years of what percentage is uncollectible. So that's that. For data, I did share what raising it to 1.736 mils is. What would be, how much money would we raise if we went to the median tax rate? Again, that's the middle rate for all townships in Monroe County. But we don't need to go that high, and that's not something that is expected or planned in my budget for this year that I created. Next year, once we see what the engineering plan for capital improvements plan shows, we will see how much money we need to be setting aside to cover our capital costs, and that will show likely much more than we're planning in our budget here. I have minimal dollars set aside for that, and I'll be able to review that. Reviewing how much will this cost taxpayers. So a new millage rate of 1 mil will cost, it's an additional 0.2 mils on taxpayers. So estimating 2,500 households in the township, using this method of estimating, it's about $50 extra per household per year. If we are basing it on a home's worth, if we're saying a home is worth $250,000, that also gets the math of $50 extra per home per year. So that is those are my planning documents, and I want to talk now about the actual next staple packet here, the budget document.
Lucas,
Yes.
before we get into that, thank you. These are great figures. We've never had anything like this. It's so detailed, well thought out. We're also facing the question of what we're going to do with our fire company and our EMS, which will probably come up next year, not this year. But I'm wondering if what we need is a much more long-range view of what revenue we need and where potentially it can come from over at least, let's say, a 3-year outlook. Because what we did last year and what we seem to be doing this year, looking through the budget, is just eking by another year with a little bit here and there. And like we say, Ed needs more for road budgets. We can't give it to him. The biggest complaint all of us get is the roads are in horrible condition. And I could go through the list of complaints, but that's probably the top one anyone has, besides taxes being too high. So it's like what kind of services do people want here? Do they want to be a first-class township? I don't mean first class in the code sense, but first class in that we're providing things that people want and need, and we're doing it efficiently, or are we just going to go on trying to somehow kick the can down the road for the next year? Well, we'll do a little bit here, we'll do a little there. I think it's time to look at this. We also know that the next few years, I would say the next 5 years, we're going to be in, let's say, turbulent financial times in this country. But government has to go on. You can't say just because we're in inflationary times that government cuts back. Where are they going to cut back? What don't you want? And I don't know the answer to that. But I have to say, just even things like the amusement tax, it sounds great until you go down and talk to somebody at probably Shawnee Inn, and they'll tell you, we can't get people to play golf at the prices we have. We keep cutting and have discount days because it's gotten so expensive, people can't do it. So you put a tax on us, it's just going to decrease our play here. And why us? Why not everybody? So, any tax that I think is for a specific group is a regressive tax. So anyway, going through it, I'd like us to at least think about that. Maybe we can talk about it more once we get further along. But just hearing you, that's my feeling.
I appreciate that input, Robert. Yeah, 100%. And you know, as we look at this budget document, you know, we don't necessarily need to go line by line here. I'm just gonna skim through, and the things I've highlighted are the things that you know, things that are highlighted in blue or they're kind of highlighted in dark gray in the budget. Those are things that are you know, either the tax increases that are scheduled or the items that I've had to reduce from, you know, what the supervisors asked for, what, you know, township manager asked for, what some of the staff have asked for. So you know, we can look at those and discuss you know, mostly on those points. So in the fund balance here, so starting from the top, it provided for the fund balance $1.57 million, $1.5 million. That pays off the bond completely. That is from our fund balance. That is not affecting our, you know, that is not causing a tax increase. None of these items provided from the fund balance are causing any tax increases or anything like that. The you know, tax increases are due to our, you know, actual structural costs, not our one-time costs that are coming out of our fund balance. So I want to make sure that that's clear for everyone. So, you know, that's money to pay off the bond. Then we have $506,000 for capital improvements. Again, that's coming from our current fund balances, from our funds, and from our own fund balance. That's not coming from any you know, new revenue or anything like that. What we will see with that is that, you know, we're not setting aside you know, we're not setting aside $500,000 to you know, in our budget to account for these capital costs. And yes, every year we're not spending $500,000 in capital improvements, but you know, this budget does not have the required amount we need to set aside. So of course that official required amount won't happen until next year when we know from the capital improvement plan from the engineering firm. Next we have fund balance $670,000 for 2024 grant expenditures that we're transferring into the capital/grants fund. These are expenditures that are happening not in 2023 but 2024. You know, again, I discussed launching the new capital improvement/grants fund. So this would be transferring into that fund for the planned grant expenses that we already know of in 2024. Just so we don't think we have this money sitting around for something else. You know, it's really already designated for, you know, these grants that we have, you know, awesomely gotten. You know, there's 15 grants going on for a variety of projects on Marshall's Falls, at Waterfront Wellness Park, with other items that, you know, mostly really has you know, gotten for the township. And you know, the return on those grants is very high. You know, 1,000% return. If, you know, $1 million costs us you know, $100,000. So you know, definitely worth these grants. So that's what setting aside that money is for. Another $36,000 is for grant expenditures in 2023 above grant reimbursement. Most of our grants are reimbursable, but there's small percentages that we have to put up for capital or anything like that. All the next line items we will see are grant related income. These are reimbursements that we're receiving in the year. I have the current expected real estate taxes. In this budget, I include the 25% increase to 1 mil for an additional $125,000 of revenue. I include $45,000 for the amusement tax, estimating low of what we can collect. There will be a 2% fee, 2.25% fee on the $50,000 that would be collected by implementing that. I estimate low for what that would bring in. With the knowledge again that that is helping us not raise taxes, property taxes as much, that is helping to charge that to visitors to our township and people who use some of these amusements. Then we continuing on to the next page. I'm not going to talk about some of these smaller line items. There's not very much changes. Real estate transfer taxes, is trending downward this year. We might not. It doesn't look like we'll hit the 295,000 this year. So I'm estimating lower for next year. We are trending slightly up for earned income taxes, which is great. 150,000 for local service taxes, just based on the average from the last year. Slight increase in our zoning fees, as we plan to recoup some more costs. Cable TV revenues is slightly decreasing because subscriptions to cable TV are decreasing year over year by about 10%. And then moving on to page 3. Not much to discuss here in the real changes. They're all minor income adjustments here, and then as we go down, minor expense increases or decreases. The one item here that I have highlighted is for salaries of elected officials. From my understanding, both Supervisors Jacob and Robert have expected to work less hours in the next year.
No one's asked me, and I don't expect to.
All right, that is news to me, Robert. So my apologies then. My budget for this was based off of 12 hours a week between all 3 supervisors. If this number is wrong, as I am now told it is, so sorry about that. Then I have to increase this budget. Of course, that increases some other items. So let's make a note of that.
Let's go back a page before we go forward.
Sure.
Just wanted, we can talk about this later, but I've mentioned this before. Even with our problems and shortfalls here, I would really love to get rid of a lot of these license and permit fees, which we make nothing on and are just an annoyance and a nuisance to people. So what have we got? Special events, we made $250. Yard sales, we made $150. I mean, it adds up to nothing, and I think it would be easier just to have the permits online, print it out, go, let us know, or send it in to us. It will be sent to us electronically. But to charge fees for this stuff is just it's such nickel and dime stuff. It would be one thing if we could say, okay, we're making $3,000 or $4,000 out of it.
Perhaps the fees should be really more on the enforcement aspect and not necessarily the procurement of them.
Well, remember that the permit still has to be filled out and sent in.
No, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think they should still have to come pick them up.
Yeah, either way, I just think it's just another annoyance of, you want to have a yard sale, pay us money.
Yeah, I mean, but budgetarily, I agree. There's no impact on the budget for these permit fees, so it doesn't affect me budget wise to go either way, including them or not. But I know the supervisor would have to decide. Yeah, it does, and
yeah. The other one that really we need is the well permit. Well,
and that's the goal of these fees, right?
Of course.
The goal is to cover the costs of our zoning office and issuing these permits. So if we remove them all, then we're covering that ourselves rather than
people fill it out online and send it in. There's really no cost. I'm talking about the ones that are just bothersome.
You mean like yard
Like
sale
yard
or?
sales, right?
Yard sale, temporary signs, special event, that's it. I don't know, what's an encroachment? Get permit to go on someone else's property?
I think it has to do with
You
wetlands.
You sound a little, don't know, Robert.
What, an encroachment?
No, a lot of this stuff was instituted so that we know what the hell's going on.
Well,
And,
but Brian, I'm not saying we
yard
wouldn't
sale,
have permits.
Special events, I mean, no, they don't generate a lot of money, but at least we know what's going on. And those that are doing them realize there's certain standards that they've got to meet, that's all.
Brian, you still need a permit.
The ass to you, Robert. Get out of the business.
Brian, you'd still need a permit. I'm just saying, let's not charge for it. You fill it out online, you send it in electronically, and we've got it. We know it. If you don't do it, we can always fine you. But it just seems like these fees are kind of ridiculous for what we get out of them. And it just, I mean, it's another thing where people say government is in my pocket for everything, even when I want to have a yard sale.
Well, part of the reason that we charge for those is because regardless of how the permit is sent in and submitted to the township, the zoning officer still needs to review that. And it's important that we don't allow those fees for somebody putting in a pool, for someone building an addition on their house, for
Those are
ensuring, right, but continuing to ensure that our ordinances are followed should not be on the onus of the taxpayers if it's someone going after a yard sale permit. Like those in particular, our ordinances are structured in such a fashion to prevent people from having yard sales every weekend of the year and creating basically a small secondhand shop on their lawn in a residential district.
So do you think collecting $150 a year on how many yard sales? 10, 15,
I think it
20?
would be 15. I think the fee's $10 per.
No, is that paying for the zoning officer's time? Does he spend any time? Is it worth it? I'm just saying, from the point of view of the public, it's just like, why are we bothering to charge people these little tiny amounts? I think this all goes back to a very ancient idea of what the zoning officer does, how we control things, and how we need to micromanage everything that goes on in this township. I mean, there's things that, fine, send in a permit, charge $1, I don't care, but it's like, it's just a nuisance we're creating for what? It's, if somebody's having more than a certain number of yard sales, we'll know about it and we'll go after them and say, you can't do it. But I don't think the permit is going to help. They just won't have permits.
Oh, God.
Well, I don't hear anything, so I guess no one agrees with me.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I mean, let's keep going throughout this and keep that in mind for when we, revise
That's what I
some
want to do
things.
is keep it in mind, because there's not much like this, but these little tiny things, I think, are just an annoyance to people, which we could alleviate
Well, I
very
mean,
easily.
we almost always waive the special event fee. I mean,
Yes, we do.
I do struggle particularly on that one because we provide absolutely zero service for that permit at all. It's $50 because we say it's 50. So I mean, I agree with you on that, but I mean,
Well, I'm saying what, yard sale, temp signs, and special events. Those are the ones. There's nothing else on here that would come under.
I mean, you still need to get a board of supervisors approval to have your special event permit. If we provided police, which I'm not suggesting that we do, Frank knows about that. Then you can justify it, but we don't. We offer that the board met, and it doesn't make sense. So I agree on that, but I mean, the others I think are important, and I think approval is still important.
Oh, I agree with that. I just don't agree with charging for them. And it comes to three: yard, temp, special event. The other things I think like well permits, and septic, or what's it, signs, whatever it happens to be, are probably justified in some way.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Especially with signs, you have to get an electrical permit, all that possible. So that's a use of the zoning officer's time.
okay, well, that's,
Yeah, I'll reiterate, I have no attachment to, you know,
Let's
yard
move
temper or special events. So, you know, whatever the board decides is, you know, good with me budgetarily then.
all right.
All right, so on to page 3. Again, so we are gonna have to discuss, you know, increasing, so I have to increase the salaries of elected officials column again. Sorry about that, Robert.
Maybe I misconstrued what you were saying. It sounded like if we were hiring someone else to do the day-to-day, that you were okay with working less hours. That's what I gleaned from your
I never-
speech at the last meeting. It was a pretty good speech, so I was like,
No, I never crossed my mind that I'm working 3 hours less. I mean, to me, I'm putting in for 15 and I probably work 20, 25.
it doesn't
whatever.
bother me
Yeah.
to change it then. I mean, well, we can discuss what we want to put it back to. It just sounded like it was going to be less.
I don't.
I'll have to show you the video of your speech.
If I could find a way to do less, I would.
Yeah,
But as you know, we're like a 24-hour call.
understood. Okay.
Yeah, no
Well, let's
no issues there. So that will,
look
it will
back at
affect
that.
our bottom line then when we get there. So,
You know, I don't know about you, Jacob, but if you want to reach me or Ron on a Sunday afternoon, you know we'll be in our offices.
It's true. Okay,
So, you know, as we go through on page 4 here, we see, again, minor increases in expenses. As we talk about staff, what I budgeted for staff here for everyone is when I say inflation increase plus, I just budgeted 8% across the board for all staff costs. Again, I know supervisors are, you know, the final say on setting these increases, but for a budget, that's what I threw in to, you know, assume I can get this,
Yeah.
you know, realistic, what our budget's gonna look
I
like.
think that's fair, and we all seem to be cool with that. I mean, the reality is that's what inflation's at, and
That
you know,
is-
in the past, we
yeah.
had tried to bump up everyone, you know, with that too, and hopefully it slows, but I think what you put is fair.
Okay, so, again, no other, you know, real, increases here. I did budget for some of our, reimbursable fees will be uncollectible, so I budgeted for 15% for that, for our reimbursement fees. You know, for our reimbursements, so, we will have some costs there. Moving on to page 5. Again, just minor increases in costs.
And some cuts, you can note that there's quite a few that are less.
Yeah,
Particularly on the computers, I mean, it's.
sure, oh, yeah,
That's down by 18 because we're, you know,
yeah, don't have as many, you know, costs there, so that's great. On page 5 here at the bottom here, you see the additional fire EMS funding. So, you know, I originally had planned for $50,000 of additional funding to cover some of the costs of our, you know, EMS and fire services to ensure, our goal is to ensure that these volunteer-driven models last as long as possible before we have to, you know, implement paid models. Originally I was planning for $50,000 for this. In the budget, I can only put in $25,000 to balance the budget, so that's something of note. On page 6, we look at again, just minor increases in everything. Monterey County Control Center went up 20%. Spring cleanup is a much higher cost, so that's why you know, the cost this year was much higher than we budgeted for. So that's why it's you know,
cost of
increased next year.
dumpsters was brutal this year.
Yeah, our you know, our waste management costs have greatly increased. We'll see that in the budget as well, unfortunately. Road crew salaries, again, so this was, we had budgeted for the additional road crew member. That's, you know, what the supervisors had agreed was needed. In this budget, I could not fit in adding an additional road crew member. I was able to include the additional office staff person for the office year, but I was not able to budget for the 7th road crew member.
The reality is we can't find someone currently to fill the sixth,
The sixth
Spot.
spot.
because
So,
it is an increase up from the
Yeah.
4 and 5 that it was originally, but
So-
7 is gonna be hard to find.
so just that's something to note in the budget that we agreed to that I could not include, in this balanced budget. So that's that. Diesel fuel greatly increasing costs. Couple of these items are had recommended, our roadmaster recommended increases in small tools or shop materials. As we move on to page 7.
Let me ask one other question.
Yeah, go
Just
ahead.
spring cleanup. We ever considered doing a spring cleanup, let's say in conjunction with Middle Smithfield? No, I don't know if it would save anything, but
Actually, Robert, we did, but maybe about 5 years ago. And it never came to fruition for one reason or another.
did they reject us?
That's a good point. Well, it didn't go too far. Let's just say that.
Well,
For one
I don't-
reason or another, that might be a good idea. Don't they do
Well-
2 a year?
if you
Yeah.
think of it, Brian, we've got our whole crew station there doing it. They've got their whole crew.
Right.
It seems like, we could split it up and at least save some manpower, if not make a better deal with Waste Management to take the stuff away.
I mean, that might be the better deal, is like just a gargantuan dumpster bid realistically, between us and them. That might not be a bad idea to see what Ed thinks about working with Corey. The only thing is now we get to fight about where it's gonna be. Cause it's gonna be
Well, that was part of it. That came up, yeah. Where is it gonna be?
Where do they do theirs? Cause I know they don't do it at their, building.
Oh, they used to, but they ran into trouble. So I don't
Yeah.
know what they do theirs now.
Will, I know it's a non-budgetary question, but will the residents be upset if it's not in the township?
I mean, they're not far. It just depends on where it would be. I mean, like if it was, up by Lake of the Pines, like, yeah, I think people would be like, okay, I'm not doing that. But
Yeah.
I think if we were able to
Sure.
even work out a deal where it's like 2, cleanups, 2 big ones between the both of us, that
Yeah.
might save some money. Or at least make what we're paying now worth it. Because the collective bid's automatically gonna be, less per dumpster if we have.
Maybe we could do an Echo Park, something like that.
Oh, yeah, they'd love that.
Well, just the dumpsters.
So I looked it
It's just a
up,
parking lot.
and Middle Smithfield does it at the municipal building and at the Wooddale Garage. They have 2
Like
locations.
the
That makes
Wooddale
sense.
Garage, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where they wanted to do it, and it's kind of I think it's asking Smithfield to, and I think travel a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it probably won't affect this budget, but let's have Ed reach out to Corey and see if they have any plans, because those bids will go out in the early, or late winter, right?
To go all
Okay.
together, yeah, get a better price.
Yeah.
What do we, Julia, what did we earn on ours last year? Or this year?
I believe we just, let me look back, I think it's just, shy of $6,500.
Yeah, I thought it was about 5,000 or a little over that.
Okay, yeah, so, that has to fit into the equation also.
That's true.
Now, I think what we're saying is we should budget for these, our planned actual increased costs for this year, but also try this year to not do it ourselves and do it with Middle Smithfield Township. If
Yeah.
it doesn't work out, we have the money to do it.
Yeah.
If it does work out, great, we save some money and we can budget less going forward. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
that sounds like a cool idea.
It sounds good.
Thanks, Brian. All right, so, where were we, guys? Sorry, on page,
Just finished 6.
gotcha, so on page 7, thanks, Jake. All right, vehicle operating expenses, those costs went up, a bit. We were budgeted a little low for that last year, or this year, I should say. Highway communication, there might have been some items that moved elsewhere to materials or supplies, but this budget is lower this year based on our actual costs in the past year.
Lucas,
Yep.
just pause for a moment,
Yep.
please. Brian, I looked it up. We
Yeah.
made $6,545.69 on cleanup this year.
Hey, what a deal. Thank you.
You're right about that.
Thanks, Lucas.
Yeah.
No problem. So
All
we
that
paid,
manpower.
Yeah,
paid 25,000 to make 6,000, but good for the town.
maybe more people give us their. broken
But Robert,
promises.
when you said what is important to our residents, that's one of the biggest,
Yeah,
spring cleanup, you know? We all
Yeah.
know that, we've all worked
That's
it.
true.
especially since so many of our residents straddle the border, so they think they live in Middle, or they live there and think they live here.
That's right, then you gotta send them back.
That actually would be an added benefit if, I don't know, we'll see how we figure it out, but that'd be cool.
All
But
right.
Lucas, I think the reduction in the communication, is that because we bought the radios last year or whatever?
Yeah, I
So
think
it costs less
exactly,
because of that.
Those radios purchases that will come out this year is exactly what that other communication expense was.
Okay.
Yep, I'm glad you mentioned that, clarify. Traffic signal repairs, that's double, but it's not really double. It's just that some of this was budgeted from the liquid fuels fund and some of this was budgeted from the general fund. It's now all being budgeted from the general fund. We will see with some of the line items coming up is that everything, we're going to go through the liquid fuel budget after we finish up this general budget. But everything that was originally from liquid fuels that's not paving is going into the general fund because liquid fuels is completely being used up by our paving costs, plus there's additional paving in the general fund. So, liquid fuels is of course not enough to cover our real needs.
Yeah.
So, still on page 7, sorry, repairs of tools and machinery is up to 50,000. That's again pulling from the liquid fuels fund. The 122,000 is the overage of the paving costs from the liquid fuels. So that's the remainder that we have to pay out of the general fund. Everything else is pretty much the same there. On to page 8. We see again 5% increases expected in some of our costs. Heating oil is up a little more than 5%. Contracted maintenance, I expect to go up with that bid. Hopefully it does not go up very much, but I do expect an increased cost there.
Sure.
The bond, you see the $1.93 million for the bond. That's all passed through again. That's from our fund balance, but it's included in the general fund budget. But that 1.9 million is passed through from what the sewer authority gives us, and from our 1.5 million to pay off the bond. Again, the interest is also passed through. Then we go to page 9. We see again minimal increases due to increased costs in Medicare, unemployment. The benefits from the pension is that's a pass-through line item. And we go, yes, go ahead.
No, it's just like, right.
So our insurances here, general liability, property insurance, that's much higher actual cost this year. It might have just been depending on the line item we budgeted for last year. That was much higher. So budgeting higher for that.
May I comment on this?
Yes.
I think the reason this is so high is because the board decided to pay our insurance outright instead of spreading it out in a monthly payment across the year. So we might actually want to look at that line item again, because what we might be seeing is having our old insurance on a monthly basis and then paying off the full year immediately.
Yeah.
So that might actually be able to get reduced a little bit, because we might be planning for 2 expenses when in reality there will only be 1.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Julie. I'm definitely have to make an adjustment there because we have our insurance is July to July. So 6 months of the year is already paid for. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That was a great catch.
Lucas, who's on Medicare? Lois is there anybody else?
That is not anything that we should discuss.
Yeah, in an open session.
Okay, all right.
But just to clarify what that Medicare cost is,
Yeah.
that is not someone's policy. That is the employer contribution. You know, we contribute towards Social Security. We contribute.
FICA.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the taxes we contribute for Medicare and Social Security. Social Security was on Social Security was on page 8. Medicare just carry over to page
Right.
9. But
Okay.
those are not those are just the FICA taxes. Employer share of the FICA taxes. Moving on then, so great catch, Julia, with the property insurance there. Our cost for hospital, dental, and vision is budgeted less than we had budgeted for, so it costs less than what we had expected it to cost. I could review again, just make sure we didn't there's no misstatement there. But our bills that are fully paid off already are less than what we had budgeted for, which is good. But that is something I will double check on as well. Looking at then other items, major equipment, Ed had recommended 25,000. I hadn't gotten what he had wanted to spend that on, but unfortunately I wasn't able to spend include that in the budget. So that's just a line item that I had removed, just so everyone can see that. Salt and cinders, again, that's moved over from the liquid fuels fund into the general fund. You'll see the interfund transfer to capital improvements grant fund every year. This 20,000 should be 200,000 or 150,000 or something like that. It's really going to be an exact number depending on we have $3 million of assets and when do they break and what's their life cycle, and working with the engineer firm next year as we budgeted to do to make a true capital improvement plan for all of our assets. But once that plan is in place, we will see if this number is nowhere near high enough that we have in here. I just wanted to start doing this, so I put in a very small dollar amount. But just note that this is not covering all of our capital improvements.
Sure.
That we need to cover. There is the one-time transfer to capital improvements. Again, this is not a budgetary effect because comes into income, goes out in expenses, not affecting the budget. The one-time transfer from our fund balance of the 506,000 for the things we previously talked about at the last meeting for capital improvements. Again, ash tree item was removed. And then we have the one-time transfer to the capital improvement fund. Again, came into income, going out in expenses, not affecting the budget of the 670,000 for the grant that we will have to lay out in the following year, 2024. Then we have a bunch of expenses that are grant related. Again, we had all the grant related income. Now we have all the grant related expenses. Very small difference, $36,000 difference between what we're laying out and what we're getting back, and that's coming out of the fund balance as well. Not budgetary effect.
Right.
So page 10 here we're looking at. So total expenses. You say, oh my gosh, Lucas, that's crazy. It's almost $7 million. It's not. That number here is only because of all the income flowing into the account and flowing out of the budget. But net it gives us as the budget stands here, we're balanced, we're okay. Now, of course, there are some items that we reviewed that will affect the budget. One being the supervisor time that I budgeted low for will be so that will be a negative effect on the budget.
But the insurance will change.
Insurance will be a positive effect on the budget.
I think one of the biggest factors which we're not considering here is green light go. We ought to be able to estimate something. It's not going to be bid till December, so we're not going to know. But assuming we get bids in by February, I guess next year we're going to have to do it, and it's only an 80% match, from what I remember.
Green light go. That is the this year we have budgeted for that grant. That's the master plan, right? That's what you're referring to.
Green light go is the traffic signal improvement along 447 209.
Gotcha. I mean, let me look at my
Page 7.
Green.
Oh yeah,
So I have a green light go estimated value of about 700,000. In my separate grants tracking, I have about 700,000 as an estimated value of it.
So we have
I have township layout.
20%, I think, it's 20 or 30% on top of that.
The layout that I have here from us is only 41,000 budgeted for 2024. Due to splitting that with Middle Smithfield,
Where's that?
Strasburg, Pocono.
So that
Julie can
is,
come.
yeah, I'll take over. That grant expense, we won't be able to, we won't have to pay those funds, recoup those monies until the grant is complete. With our discussions with Christopher May right now, we're looking at potentially being able to bid the project in December, go out, and have construction started sometime in April, May, completion by September. And because this grant is so massive, what we're assuming is that we're not going to get a bill from Christopher May's engineering firm or whoever is billing us until 2024. So when we signed on for that grant, the township committed $41,000 as part of the match. Smithfield has a portion as well, and there are others related to Pocono, Strata, et cetera, et cetera. So we only need to worry about that $41,000 expense. And presently, because of how slowly this grant has been pushing forward, I'm assuming that once Christopher May gets all the paperwork together and everything, we're going to be in the very first few months of 2024.
Well, at least it'll be, knock on wood, constructed, next year. That'd be nice.
So,
We can help.
so I will comment. So that 41,000 is planned. That's a part of the 670,000 we're transferring into the grant capital for the fund as layout in 2024.
So in the event that it happens, we're prepared.
Yes, we can, it's prepared to be spent in 2024. It's transferring in, so it could technically be spent in 2023. It could. But I will comment that we're not planning to spend $700,000. We do not have $700,000 set aside anywhere, so everyone's aware. Just that $41,000 is what's being set aside, with the assumption, as Julia said, of this is not a township layout for us. If that's an incorrect assumption, things will need to be adjusted. But yeah,
Makes sense.
all right. So it's very possible that the insurance positive effect and the supervisor negative effect are going to kind of cancel each other out. I don't think there's going to be a huge difference between these changes, but I can make these changes and I will make these changes.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure the real benefit of paying off the whole line right now. If it's truly not restricted in any way, it's really part of your cash balance. Given the cost, the increased cost of borrowing, that being locked into lower rates, and given the things that you're not being able to do in the future, I'm not sure it's a good idea to pay off that big thing. Maybe we can use it if it's not restricted in other ways.
Yeah, well, I think you make a great point, Frank. Exactly, it's not restricted really. It can be used for other things. The issue with not paying it off, though, is that it makes us, I feel that we're tricking ourselves into thinking we have extra money and that we can just balance our budget by pulling from the fund balance when in reality, it's not balanced. So, by paying it off using that fund balance, when we say, oh, we have $200,000 in costs next year, we know we have to raise taxes. There's no pulling from the fund balance.
Yeah, that's the point. In order, you're going to drop your fund balance from, not including the ARP fund, from 3 million to about 950.
Yeah,
that's a significant drop.
Yeah, well,
and any way to get future money is going to be either raise taxes or borrow more money at the higher interest rate.
Yeah, well, and you make a good point. I think my general thought is the township should not be having to borrow money generally unless it's crazy big expenses. But if there's crazy big expenses, that's because we haven't been planning for them for the last 30 years or in the future 30 years.
I mean, you could add a 1.5. You could pay 1 million. You could pay $500,000. I mean, there are other options. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, I think if we pay it off now, it will save us $130,000. If we don't pay it off, if we made this, if we just pretended that money was in our fund balance and we didn't pay it off, that's I can tell you exactly, but that money, because we're paying it off, in the budget next year is not included as a budget line item. If we made that a budget line item,
As a debt, but,
exactly.
but
So that
we
would
would
be-
also be able to.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think we're cutting it pretty tight.
It would just be 237,000, if I say we want to have a structurally balanced budget of, all of our income that's non-recurring meets all of our expenses that are, all of our recurring income meets all of our recurring expenses. $237,000 extra that we have to find somewhere, which is just, that's great tax increases. I don't think we should say, let's, pull it from the fund balance, when,
The alternatives are increased tax.
Exactly.
Or borrow more money again.
Yeah.
At the higher.
I don't think
those
it
are-
makes sense to borrow more money and, I think that we're kidding ourselves if we think that our increases, I mean, our population's increased by about 43% since, the nineties, if not a little bit more. I worry that, if we don't pay off the bond now, we're gonna end up in a place where future supervisors, none of us that are here now are gonna be in a really terrible spot to have to raise revenue and meet, the fire and EMS, balloon that's on the verge of popping already. That's my concern. I think, is there a way that maybe pay a significant portion of the bond and reduce our our yearly payment, and then, or do we have to abide by the schedule that they have now? Because we can't really refinance it, otherwise we're gonna go up,
Yeah, no,
7% or something.
No,
Yeah, we couldn't refinance. That's a good question. I would have to check and see if paying off half of it does it reduce our timeline, or does it reduce our yearly payments? I would have to look into that. It might depend on what half of the bonds we pay off. They might have to, because some bonds are callable. There's like a big old packet of bonds, and some are callable in 2023, and some are callable in 2024, some are callable in 2025.
Right.
So they might have to split it up like that. I don't know how they do that. I guess but my thought is, though, setting aside $600,000 as our operating reserve, and this is our, 3 months worth of expenses recommended by, government financial,
Isn't it like
board.
DCED?
Yeah, the DCED recommends it as well, but, just the nationwide government financial, accounting board or something, recommends kind of at least that, 3 months worth of expenses. So, us pretending like that doesn't exist, to me, is a good enough kind of a emergency fund. Looking at what emergencies the township might have, but, I don't want to not pay it off, saying we should, keep this money here as, extra emergency fund. I think maybe, 600Ks are enough of an emergency fund, besides all the money already in the capital improvement fund, to cover that, because it's not making any money sitting around there, and, I don't want to say, hey, pull from the fund balance to pay stuff, because we really owe, we owe, $1.5 million already. We shouldn't be trying to fund anything at all in the future with debt. It's not,
Yeah,
long-term feasible.
eventually the margin call might come.
Yeah. Yeah, but I definitely see what you're saying, Franco. It's something that, we gotta consider, that it does lower our fund balance.
I mean, if it was restricted, yeah, pay it off. There's nothing you can do there, but since it's not restricted, you might be able to do some other things instead of future borrowing or raising tax.
I think the problem is, and maybe there's a point we can see what, what's possible in our next session, where we hopefully wrap this up, but, I worry that if we're at 0.8 now and we potentially go to 1, that's already going to cover some of what's not really been accounted for over the last several years. But then, in the event that you don't go to 1, which I'm not crazy about, but if you don't go to 1, then you're going to be going from 0.8 to 0.6, or not 0.6, 1.6 or something a couple years down the line, and then you're going to have less money in the bank anyway. Because we're getting a lot of the money back from the grants. Almost all of it.
Yeah, the great, and
The
it's
layout
not-
is not the issue.
Yeah, it's not, I think, our fund balance.
That our realty, our real estate taxes have only brought in 400 grand for the last 30 years, even though population increased by a lot. I mean, most townships, their EIT is about equal to their property
If
taxes.
you cut any revenue tax increase,
Yeah,
I'd be more concerned about paying off that whole amount.
yeah.
Because again, that really, tighten us up even more as far as emergency plans.
The other thing to think about, and all this makes is the increase in the population here, because just with some of the developments we now have in work, we don't know if they'll actually come to fruition. It seems to be. I'd say we could easily add maybe 2,000 households in this area between, what we got, Gateway, Shawnee Valley, Westfield Commons, right there. So I'm not sure what that would give us an increased revenue, because that's all
Well, that will
apartments.
happen, but then the services that we have now are still going to cost more to provide to more people. We can barely afford the ones we provide right now.
Except if they're apartments, I think we're providing,
Well, that changes things, sure.
they all use the same road.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it's just a factor, because it's gonna definitely grow.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
The whole
you know.
county is. We grew the fastest in the last census.
Yeah.
Out of anybody.
To grow the fastest with the lowest, one of the lowest township taxes is looks good. It also means we might not be, planning well for our future, which is, an issue.
Actually, in the census, we were the only one that did grow, weren't we?
I mean,
County losses.
there were like a couple others, but we were the highest over, more than 8%. And then Stroud and
And the
Chestnut
county
Hill were
lost,
behind us.
the county lost population.
The West End dwindled.
I want to take us through the liquid fuels
Yeah,
budget and a
go
couple
ahead.
other budgets before we talk more. So on page 10, liquid fuels fund, minimal increases. I know, Robert, at the last meeting you had asked, what was the increase, for, fuel prices went up, are we getting more? Went up from 266,000 to 283,000 for liquid fuels. So, very minimal increase compared to, what our actual costs are. State road turnback is the same, road maintenance is the same, that we're, getting income wise in the liquid fuel fund. Most of these expenses had to move into the general fund, because it didn't make sense to pull them out of here when we have more than enough paving costs to cover the whole use of the liquid fuels fund. This year we're budgeting for $327,000, the full amount going into liquid fuels, coming right out of liquid fuels, for contract paving and some in-house paving. With, again, the rest already covered by our general fuel fund, or general fund.
Makes sense.
Moving on to professional escrow fees. This is not necessarily a fund that requires a budget, but just so you can see what's going on here. These reimbursable fees that are income, I'm assuming 85% collection on what actually is reimbursable. So, some individuals are not paying us back, and might not pay us back.
We consider going to a collections agency. I know we have to pay a commission on something like that, but if people owe us, can we get it?
Yeah,
Or some of it?
we could, and we definitely could. This is my conservative assumption. I'm not, I don't have a solid data right now of what percentage of money do we not receive in the year that we, technically, are owed that money.
Right.
But just to budget conservatively, that's what I threw in there. But if we do find that's a lot of money, we can indeed go after someone for that if we would like to. And this is just accounting for the transfer from the general fund to cover some of those reimbursable fees.
But
And then, then it balances out to nothing. So next we have the capital improvements grant fund. Again, this is the new fund that's being created to plan for our capital expenditures. And grants is included in here because of, all of our grants are really for capital expenditures as well. So we have, again, from the fund balance, we have 506,000 for capital projects. Then we have 670,000 set aside for 2024 grant expenditures. And then we have the agreed upon list that we had reviewed at the last budget meeting of what everyone's priorities were for funding these capital expenses. Again, I will note that this money is coming out of our fund balance and not included in the general fund as, you know, a cost. What that also means, though, is that if you say next year I want to spend $500,000 in capital improvements, you know, we will only have $20,000 set aside for capital improvements above and beyond our grants, and that requires tax increases to spend, you know, all for those capital improvements. So, you know, we are balancing the budget this year with, you know, 1 mil, but it's not, you know, structurally long term. We are not solving any problem.
Maybe you need more than 1 mil.
I would be fine with that, Robert. But I know residents might be opposed, but I would be, you know.
I'd rather use some of that buffer money.
Yeah.
I'd rather reserve some of that money.
It's just, well, and that's just the problem, right? Is that, you know, either it almost pushes it off that, you know,
It can't work.
if we use the bond money now, it's not like we don't have to pay it later. Still, we got to raise taxes later. It's just, yeah, do we raise it now or do we raise it later? And yeah. But that's the document. Yeah.
Now is when we're in trouble.
Yeah, we are in trouble now and we'll be in trouble later still.
Maybe not.
I don't mind using, you know, a lot of the fund balance. I mean, we already are in this. You know, but I do think it'd be a mistake to just delay everything forever because there was never going to be a, you know, a perfect time.
Then we got to raise taxes.
Well, I'm not suggesting that yet. I mean, I think that there will be changes that occur naturally without, you know, that have budgetary, you know, consequences in the positive sense. I think is, you know, that more and more things are being constructed in the township. There's going to be more people working in the township. So I think we're being a little bearish. Not that I would change it, but I think we're being a little bearish on the earned income tax revenue for next year at about 840,000. I think it's probably going to be closer to 900,000, if not 1 million, just based on, you know, we're going to be having doctors and medical professionals that are going to be working in the township that are not currently working in the township. East Stroudsburg presently has that benefit. I think that there's going to be things of that nature, along with the road construction projects that bring in some sort of, you know, naturally occurring revenue as opposed to just increases. But
Well, let's go back to this amusement tax for counting on that. And I just think it's a bad idea. I mean, I think it's dumping responsibility onto one amusement that we have, which is, what do we have? 2 golf courses?
well, I think
2 golf courses.
what
Yeah,
else
that's
is
it.
in that?
That's $45,000, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The bulk of the money is exactly from those 2 golf courses. Then, you know, if someone is paying $100 though for you know a 16 holes of golf now and they're paying $105, I don't know that is, you know, I don't know that is creating any issues for them.
Well, maybe we should consult the golf course owners before we slap a tax on them.
Oh, they won't like it.
They won't like it, but at least it's some discussion so that it's not a surprise. Suddenly, okay, we picked you.
Frank, well, I mean, it's not we picked you, you know, it is.
Yeah.
We have.
I mean, I like golf, it's fun, but I don't,
They just so
I
happen to be
think
the
there is it could get a perception like, you know, the camelback tax, for example. I mean, Frank, do you want to talk about how that's?
Easier. because
Yeah.
it's most outside. But
Right.
with the golf, I don't know if that's true here, but it's probably a lot more.
Probably some amount, but
I mean,
I don't-
they're gonna, again, it's not a lot of money. I don't think it changed their business. I think it's a, you know, revenue source that we should not ignore, but they'll accept it.
I just think any revenue increase should be spread over everybody, not just a certain subset that happens to like golf.
I mean, there's the art museum. I mean, there are other things that will occur. I think we have to look at this not just from today's perspective, but looking forward too. I do not expect anyone to build any water parks in Smithfield, but if someone were to, build some other qualifying amusement, of which there's a great number of them.
Well, then we could pass an amusement tax.
Yeah, I
We don't
mean,
even have a movie theater at this point.
didn't we give a liquor license back? Brian, do you remember Gateway getting the liquor license transfer about 2, maybe 3 years ago for a sports bar movie theater? You never know, Robert.
Yeah, yes, I do.
So I'll comment that, based on this estimate from James from Berkheimer, he had said, it's only 40% of the green fees that were actually going to, be taxable. But, he estimated that, $60 is Shawnee's price and $20 would then be Terra Green Golf Course's price. And, the fees on that are, 5% of $60 is $3. It's not high, increased fees on.
No, but it's just them. That's what's
Yeah.
going to react to.
Which is, but amusement taxes are the only tax that has any chance at all of being at least partially outsourced. We can argue, is it 20%, is it 50%, is it 75% that is outsourced towards, people coming in? We can argue the percentage there, but it is, the only tax that has a lot of, potential to outsource some of our costs to people that come to our area.
You think we could sell the township to the Visitors Bureau? Cash in on that 3% bed tax?
Yeah, it's like 10% or something. The hotel
I mean, thinking
tax,
about $13 million a year.
I would love a percentage of the hotel tax. If it was within our taxing ability, I would love it.
Isn't something like that up to the commissioners, the county commissioners? Do they have to they don't have to give all that money to
Yes,
the Visitors Bureau, correct?
I think you are right. I can't comment 100% on that, but
I think it goes directly to the Visitors Bureau and they give some little bit back to the county.
Well, no, I mean, it's probably how it works in practice, but I think in statute, it's supposed to be the county collects it and they,
Well, county collects it.
yeah.
But I think by state law,
It's nice if they promoted more of like Smithfield. I don't know. We have a pretty good relationship with Chris Barrett and they didn't indicate that they were going to help us on a number of grants, so I can appreciate it from that perspective, but yeah, the collections boomed over the last 2, 3 years.
Yeah, I will clarify on the amusement tax that just based on Jim's estimate here, it is also taxing the Frazetta Art Museum. It is also taxing Shawnee Playhouse is $4,000. The Guided River Tours is $4,000. So it is other items that
they'll love that.
yeah. So but we are
God,
not.
I hope you don't need a guided river tour if you live here.
We are not the first township to think about an amusement tax. Pocono Township has an amusement tax. Many other townships have amusement taxes. Frank, I don't know if you
How
can comment
about we
on
tax
how it
the
works.
trolley that comes over the border from Delaware Water Gap and gives tours here? We could charge it every time it comes up the road.
If we could, if it would save our taxpayers money, I would consider it.
It's like tea times at Shawnee range from $25 to $40 to $50.
This is just trying to ease the pain on the general taxpayer by sticking it to somebody else. And I think it's
sticking it
unfair.
externally. You're exactly right. That is what it is. That it's sticking it elsewhere, but also those people are using it. Those people elsewhere are coming here to use our services and use our roads, and we have to plow our roads and pave our roads and all that. So it's not necessarily unreasonable, but I do get your perspective. That
Yes, if there were a larger business, it would probably be a little different. But I will say it explicitly forbids it on like skiing because the state,
It's what?
it's forbidden on skiing.
So on
Oh,
Shawnee,
it is?
on Shawnee
Correct.
Mountain,
How did that happen?
The Pennsylvania State Legislature, when it adopted the legislation, decided that we should be more competitive. So that's it doesn't apply that with other states. So that's why it also doesn't apply to racetracks. So Pocono Raceways. Yes, movies. I mean, there's a limited subset of things that it can
So in
work
other
on.
words, whoever had a really good lobbyist.
yeah,
It's getting-
probably. So
Probably.
Shawnee Mountain, ski resort, which a lot of people come here for that would not be taxed, but a lot, but
And that's used by a lot of
Yeah.
locals too.
But and think about though too, the any concerts we have, any event conferences that are charging fees, those are amusements too. Those are to an event gets put in Smithfield, that's an amusement that tax. would
So you're
all
saying
be.
PSATs should be in Smithfield next year?
Well,
It's good food for thought.
I'm against regressive taxes, and I think anything like this is.
Robert, I think, we have an interesting difference of opinion here because I am also against regressive taxes. And I feel this is progressive in a way where to me, this is another tax on a luxury good. And I'm happy to tax luxury goods that are exported to other people that don't live here and have to pay our taxes, which are already high enough. But I know we have a difference of opinion on that and I get that.
And I think as far as golf, you're making the assumption, and I don't know if it's true or not, that most of the golfers are from out of this area, so that it wouldn't affect anyone here. I don't know. I really just don't know. That's why I say maybe since it's going to affect golf more than anything else we have, maybe we should be talking to the golf
It can't
operators.
hurt to reach out and hear about them. I will say one of them is East Stroudsburg Borough because it's Terra Greens, and then the other would be Shawnee.
And Terra Greens, I would think, is almost all locals, isn't it? It's cheaper.
Probably it's probably fairly similar to Country Club with the Poconos.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much local. So Shawnee would be hit hardest because or maybe hit less because there are a lot of out of state people from New Jersey. Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea what the mix is now.
Well,
But,
let me just say, before my stroke, I was a golfer. And I'd say that we have leagues, and it's pretty much all, Monroe County residents. But still, there is a hell of a lot of there are a lot of people that do come over that bridge to golf at Shawnee, or they did anyway.
Okay. Well, now that Shawnee's building a new bridge, they can come over easily.
That'll drive them in.
When I look,
Terra Greens is pretty much going out of business too, Robert.
Yeah.
It's a shambles. You can't even play it.
Well, isn't that owned by the borough of East Stroudsburg?
Yeah.
now?
Yep. And they have other ideas for it.
I was gonna say, Brian, isn't that where they're also trying to plan the future community pool because they
Well, Olympic,
Stansbury-
competitive pool. They
Right.
want that pool to be at least competitive in that field. Olympic
Right.
swimmers and that.
for sure.
I don't know where that went though. They partnered. East Strasburg University was a part of it, and we met a few times, but I don't know if anything's going on with it. I do know that people I know, they pull in to look at the golf course and they just drive away, and I don't blame them. Why would they put money into it if they don't have to?
True.
Well, I'm for one of two things as far as raising revenue. Either raising the millage rate above 1, which we're not talking about, or paying off the bond in installments rather than paying it off all at once, so that we have some money there that we can draw on. Either one, but I just don't believe that things like amusement taxes are things we should get into. That's my opinion.
We're too restricted, Robert. You're right. It all comes down to Shawnee.
Yeah, basically, Brian, that's it.
All right.
But I just want to clarify, what would happen if we don't pay off the bond? So, $280,000 a year. Let's say we said, hey, we're okay with pulling this from the fund balance to pay, this year. If we pulling it from the fund, we have $1.5 million set aside, pulling it to pay off the bond over the next 10 years will only pay off the bond. It will not pay for anything else.
Right.
So if we said we're going to use that money to pay for other items, it doesn't actually help us at all, because come year 10 from now, when the bond is finally due, we don't have that money and we have to raise taxes. So we're just pushing it off. So it's not, mathematically, it doesn't change our answers. Well, to me, might as well fix it now.
Well,
Yeah,
And whatever-
and you gotta realize that that bond is one of the best deals we've ever made. We, I guess twice, we refinanced, and each time was, we made money. We built our garage with the money
Yes.
that we made on it. And we don't pay insurance as long as we have a AAA or AA credit. So
Right.
keep that
Yeah,
in
yeah.
mind.
No, you're right, Brian. You
Your
know,
credit's good.
the interest rate is only, 3% is what it will be, going forward, which is not bad at all for a bond like this. It's great. It's just a matter of, if we ignore interest for the moment, and, with our plan to not purchase things with debt, just, because, why pay interest? It doesn't help us. If we use that fund balance to cover costs this year for paving, for, not issuing an amusement tax or other things like that, using that fund balance doesn't help us. It doesn't, years from now, then we have to raise taxes even more because we don't have the money then to pay off the bond anymore. So, it doesn't, it's not solving our problem. We need a balanced budget now, whether or not you include paying off the bond. If you say, the reasoning, Frank said with, okay, maybe we want extra more reserves in the 600K aside, that's a separate issue. But to me, if you said, I want to use that fund balance to pay stuff, that doesn't solve anything because then we're negative. Right now we have to transfer a small amount of money to pay off our bond because what's set aside for a bond is not exactly enough. If you take 200,000 out of that, that's 200,000 more we don't actually have to pay off our bond.
Just a side question. Have we earmarked all the ARP funds now?
Good question. So I'm glad you asked, Robert. So
When you're talking about funds, it brings up the fact that the sewer authority would really like another 100,000 from us because it'll help them float their costs of expanding.
my general recommendation on that sewer authority 100,000, my general recommendation would be at this time, just because we don't have the money set aside, I don't think we can afford to give another 100,000. That would be my general
Well,
recommendation.
That's why I'm asking about the
Yeah. No, I'm glad you asked.
ARP funds because that's what they were hopefully planning on.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're doing with it.
Well, so that money, those are funds remaining 684,000 if we on the fund balances page, that flows right into that. That's included in the rest of our money. It's it's no more. It will be no more after next year.
It pays for radios and
But it pays for radios, and then the rest of it just goes into our general.
nothing that
Exactly, it just goes to our general fund balance. It's paying for, if you want to look at what's it paying for, well, it's either remaining in our fund balance, it's paying for future grants, or it's paying for some of the capital expenses we're paying this year. It's not really separate. It's just kind of getting included in there.
could we, if we were to not pay the bond, which would be my dismay, if we were to not pay it off entirely, could we utilize the money that we have in that account better than just letting it sit at People's? Because the interest rates are not terrific there.
So-
Could we CD ladder? Could we?
So putting it in Pliget would be, again, not backed by the FDIC, but that would be the best interest rates, and it would, be slightly above the value that, slightly above our interest rate that the bond is charging. Or the bond interest rate increases slightly as interest rates go up in our environment that we're in right now. That is likely happening. Pliget interest rates will increase slightly, and it does earn us a little bit of money, so that is an option. But just setting it aside is that's one thing, but using that balance is another thing completely. That's like saying we want to take out a 3% interest loan to not raise taxes, when instead we can just raise taxes. Why pay 3% interest when, why pay interest at all when, it's either now or later, taxes are needed.
Lucas, now that we have you, now that you've joined this team, I really think whatever we do here, because we're gonna have to raise taxes to some extent. We're talking about how much, right? It's time to send a letter to every household in the township explaining where we are, what we're doing, and also where we see light at the end of the tunnel, because I think there is some, and that we've just said the population is going to increase. I don't think services are going to increase for that population like they do for single family homes. I think it's a different metric there. I don't know what it is, maybe Berkheimer would know. So that we have an increase in revenue there, earned income and also property taxes. As we say, medical facilities here, the building out of Smithfield Gateway, we don't get any property taxes off of that for what, 20 years?
We do get some. It's the first 10 years is about 25% of what the increment is, and then the latter 10 is going to be about 80% of what it was.
I think it'd be earned income. Everybody that works is gonna be working there.
So
That's
I'm
giant.
I'm glad you mentioned that earned income. So, that's something that, unfortunately, the way the earned income works is, we don't get that earned income unless they live here. We get the earned income from people that live here. The earned income from people who work here goes to their home township. So, that
Is
is.
there anything we can do about that?
I would love to, Robert, but
New York City,
that is
finds
a-
a way to tax people.
that is a real conversation I had with, the one of the people I spoke to at Berkheimer, really understanding that, because I didn't realize that at first, but.
Well, as there's more jobs here, I think it will naturally tick up. There's
Yeah.
also more people that are
Yeah.
entrepreneurs now.
Sure.
And I think that particularly with, I don't think Gateway will have residential structures up next year, but probably the year after. At that point, things will, come in too. I mean, the move-in rates are insane on some of these units, especially the 55+ units. I look at similar ones in New Jersey and then in the Lehigh Valley. Within a year, a lot of buildings are totally filled. I mean, it's like the competition.
So I would just say, if we had a community of only people working here and no one living here, we would get no earned income taxes from that, so that's very bad. But that is, good to know, but also very bad. We only really get the.
There's no way around that towards the newer
State law,
enlightened tax.
state law.
I like your thinking, Robert, I do, but we don't have that tax on, like New York City has that tax, we don't have that. We don't have that ability to implement that. So that's not great. If we say,
But an automobile parking tax.
For what, your own driveway?
all the taxes I looked at that we could implement, the only two things are the amusement tax or the business privilege tax.
No way.
So, those are the only two additional revenue streams that we have potential for.
Well, the business, what was it?
The business privilege tax.
Privilege tax. Sounds good on paper, but I think it's uncollectible for most people. They just won't register. You won't know they're working from
Well,
home.
it's collectible, except everyone that's in business is gonna think that it's ridiculous.
So like Berkheimer would collect it. Anyone who files their local taxes as an LLC or as, a Schedule C return, like they would get all that. It wouldn't be too uncollectible, but it doesn't, $16,000 doesn't solve any of all the hassle of that for nothing.
What does that mean? There's 160, 170
exactly.
businesses that
Registered.
qualify.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
No.
the issue is we're trying to squeeze as much out as we can, without getting anywhere near close to the median township tax rate, knowing that all the other townships have had to, raise their millage rates immensely over the last, years. And we've done a good job of not having to do that. And, we will continue to try and do a good job of,
I think we're more
Not
efficient
having-
than other municipalities, but I think it does have to.
but we can't be, we
Go
can't-
up some.
we can't be half we can't be half the median. The median is the middle, meaning that there's, many townships that are double the median. So we can't be half of the median. We're crazy low for a township.
You don't have to be cool, Bob, but we could be more like Paradise. Hell, even Eldred is 1.95.
So, and if you say this year, no, because we need 60K extra for paving that Ed recommended, we need that additional road crew member. We should be budgeting for 100K for our capital reserves every year. Then, show me what to cut or move, but really we're cutting things. I don't see a lot of fluff in our, because the capital expenditures are from the fund balance. I don't see a lot of fluff in the budget. I see necessary costs that are increasing.
Capital spending is not gonna be there next year.
Yeah, exactly. And those are not affecting our structural.
Higher.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
you're basically deferring again, future.
Yeah, if we're not setting aside money for capital reserves, if we're not setting aside money for paving, we are just deferring it all.
And just as a statistic, right? Middle Smithfield's on twice what we are, right? Middle Smithfield has about 80 miles of road. We have about 58 or so. So they've got just a third more, but their tax rate is twice what ours are. And their roads are in better shape.
Yeah.
Because they have more money.
Well, and you're so right, Robert. I think, and I think, you know, looking at it like that is it's even worse than you say, because it's not, you know, they have, you know, their assessed values are more than ours. Their tax rate on that assessed values gets them, you know, this amount. If we had the same tax rate, we would get half, because we have, you know, generally half of their population. If our assessed millage rate was the same, we would get half of what they're getting. So, but we're getting not half of what they're getting. Our rate is half, so we're getting a quarter of what they're getting because our rate's not even the same. But I get that, and our goal is not to raise it. You know, it's not just raise it for no reason. It's not raise it to the median. You know, don't want to do that, and you know, unless we really had to. But you know, if we say we need more paving, if we say we need to budget for capital reserves or anything like that, then you know, that's where we're at. We say you don't want the improvement tax. That's where we're at.
I think the residents should know what we go through and also what we're projecting and what we need and why things. If you get a letter, your taxes are going up.
Yep.
You can't even fix my roads. Well, why? What?
Yep.
How much do we need if we're going to do that?
Yeah.
How do we compare to other townships? Nobody has any information. All they can do is grumble about it because
Yeah.
they don't know.
Yeah, if someone says our taxes are going up 25%, how dare you, not realizing that we have one of the lowest taxes in all of Monroe County? It's hard. I get that, and I could definitely, you know, write a letter that
Well,
attaches.
it would be nice at minimum to have a letter that explains sort of the capital improvements as well, because I noticed not many townships, but I know Middle Smithfield and I believe Coolaw do a letter that they publicize that explains, you know, what their plans are, how it helps emergency services and roads. And, you know, I think that's a nice touch. I don't know if we need a giant meeting in the middle of the year like our neighbors in Middle Smithfield do to say, look at what we did so far. But I do think it would be nice to.
In case of emergency funding needs, what would it take to borrow money? How fast can you get it? I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's lines of credit and stuff like that, but I'm just a little concerned on that.
Do you feel 3 months worth of expenses is too?
I think that's the way.
Would, you know,
Given the uncertain economy.
Would you do 6?
Huh?
Would you do 6 or
I'd be, well, what are you saying? It is
6 months?
Oh, yeah, I feel a lot better.
so, you know, originally I wanted to do 4 months with $800,000 worth of expenses. You know, 6 months, I would love 6 months, you know, but you know, if we think about it as, you know, in a real emergency, the 670K that's in our capital improvement fund is being used for emergencies too. So, you know, yes, it's set aside for capital improvements, but in an emergency, I kind of look at it as we have that as well. You know, in a real dire emergency, we're not gonna let the township fail and not touch our capital improvement fund. We're gonna use that, and we're gonna use our 600K reserve. So I would kind of look at it as like that. It's, you know, to set aside an extra 600K in our operating reserve would be, you know, on top of our capital reserve that we're already transferring money into for 2024. So I would think about that.
Getting back to this letter, I'm not obsessed with this. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking.
Just extremely interested.
And seriously interested that, as I remember back here, we have nothing for social media this year, right? That's because we're gonna hire somebody that'll handle that for us.
Yep.
I'm,
Among
one
other-
of the reasons, another reason for this letter is to beg people just to subscribe to our newsletter. So if we can get that out on enough residents, at least we have a way of communicating. I mean, we have nothing right now. I don't think we have more than, what, 300 people that
like 350.
So, and potentially we should have, what, 2,000 households?
I mean, there's 2,000 households, so I mean, if you're talking, it'd be nice to have about 2,000 to, you know, average about 1 per household or something.
Are you looking to spend, you know, $5,000 this year sending a letter to each household? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, we have to spend what we have to get them out, to send them.
Well, they don't have to be first class mail, you know, they
No.
or sorry, they don't have to be certified mail.
No,
Just a note, you know.
no.
There's actually stuff that a way that we could do it, I think we put a notice in before, when tax bills came out or something with Berkheimer.
Well,
where we
I did
explored
that 1 year,
Yeah.
trying to get people to subscribe to the
Yeah.
newsletter. It didn't work.
Well,
but I
I'm just
did-
saying it's one way that probably
Yeah.
doesn't cost us anything on top of doing other outreach, I think would be helpful.
It's difficult because nobody knows who does it. Then you finally get to somebody at Berkheimer who thinks that they do it, but then you have to get to how big it is, how much it weighs. It's endless. And
Right.
it's possible, but I'm just saying, we really
Sure.
got to get a subscription so that we have
Yeah,
something, and then somebody who's capable of doing the newsletter.
well, yeah, I mean, and I think that's planned in here. So I mean, now we just have to figure out what revenue needs to be raised and what we're doing on the bond. It sounds like consensus of the three of us is hold on to the bond for now and potentially put a little more in reserves and then, have revenue raised accordingly to meet the expenses that we're trying to do now and not necessarily capital improvement, but pay for the existing services.
I don't think there's anything in this entire budget that I consider excessive. I think it's all very tight. Too tight, but
Yeah, it's, I would love to have more flexibility, but I think you're right. We've been really fortunate in what we've been doing for the last several years, but I think the income is potentially a little bit bearish, but I'd rather plan on a bearish scenario than a bullish one on that. But, it's really just moderate increases based on, I think that each year to year, each budget goes up by a couple percent just based on, maybe a small new program or maybe, the 3% inflation that we were used to versus 8
Yep.
or 6 or 8.
well,
And I mean, it's just disproportionate increases from fuel costs. And then I think fortunately for some of the capital improvements, we are going to be able to get grants for that, particularly on anything related to vehicles, because the state has a very generous, green vehicle program, and the recycling funds, also are in the same mindset. I mean, we got to do the Kings Pond culvert replacement. That's not really an optional thing. And that's capital improvements anyway, so it doesn't really change the bottom line. Our grills are rusted out. If we want people to actually use them,
need new drills.
yeah, and ADA accessible ones. And I mean, look, I think it's pretty good. The only thing that I would be concerned about still is the $200,000 for a loader, but that really just saves us money for the fund balance. I would love to explore getting a used one, but other than that, I think the minor tweaks that we talked about with some salaries, insurance, and a couple other small things here and there, I think are the only things that we can really tinker with, and then we have to figure out what revenue has to be raised.
Yeah, and I'll comment on the capital list, the 506,000. Again, that's not coming from our taxes at this time. That's coming from our fund balance, which, of course, we cannot sustain in future years. And this list of $506,000. These are the things that we are spending money on anyway next year that we will, greatly go after grants for. That I know Julia will probably have some success with some of these, because Julia is great at getting grants. So I think that will save us some money from our, again, though, from our fund balance. It's not from, not from our.
You're planning that the supervisors go from a cap of 55,000 to a cap of 16?
That was what my understanding was, that you and Jacob were not working next year. So my apologies for
Well,
that.
it wasn't
for
really
assumption.
that it wasn't at all.
was-
I think you said when we talked about having another staff member that supervisors are not supposed to necessarily do all the day-to-day stuff. This leaves us more time. Maybe that was interpreted as taking a slash and machete to that line item. But look, we can fix that.
Yeah, easy fix. My apologies.
I would leave it at 55.
Yeah, no, I agree there.
I mean, I
but
don't think we've spent that. I don't know. This
No,
firm has spent that
but it's
much.
good to leave the cap, and we're gonna resolve our matter. But
I mean,
that said, that's gonna come from savings on the insurance anyway, because I think it's probably put in there double.
Yeah.
Because like, I think it reasonably goes from 35 to 45, right? But there's no way we
Exactly.
didn't add coverage.
So, if we have to add back in, it's about $40,000 for supervisor pay. So we add back in $40,000 for supervisor pay. We take out about $30,000 from the insurance line items that I adjusted incorrectly. And if we say no amusement tax, that's 50K more we have to account
Right.
for. If we say, if you tell me we really need paving, that's 60K more we have to account for. And if you tell me,
I guess the understanding on the paving though is that he traditionally gets about 85 to 90% of what, of what's on the schedule. There's just too many natural events, not necessarily disasters. Fortunately, this year we've been okay without hurricanes. But
I still think you need a higher tax rate than 1 mil.
well, and that's what I'll tell you. So, if you said we need those things, that 60K for paving, and if you say we don't, then fine.
And I think you gotta do paving. I mean, look, I look at, for instance, Buttermilk Falls Road.
Yeah.
And Ed did a nice job of sort of
yeah,
making the worst of it better, but that's gotta be paved. That's gonna be $125,000 easily or more. Just
But that's a PennDOT road.
Huh? No, it
That's a
isn't.
PennDOT.
It's ours. Buttermilk
No.
Falls, I think, only the bridge is.
Oh, the bridge. Yeah, I'm talking about the bridge.
No, the bridge is in terrible shape, but at least it's not our problem.
Yeah, but it is in a way, Robert. We get the calls.
The rest of it is, Ed did a nice job of trying to patch it up this year, but it's gonna have to be paved. And, that's
Yeah.
like 125,000 or 150,000. It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So,
Should we wait for Jacob?
I mean, I ride over these roads and I think, how are we gonna afford this? But we gotta do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have some more data on what the rate might look like if you are, planning to do paving and all that, more capital improvements and all that. But I'll wait for Jacob to get back.
And the other thing is, we did part of River Road, the rest of River Road is gonna need it, especially the part that's from the Smithfield Elementary down to the border with what we call it, the roundabout. That's in terrible shape too. Again, that's probably 150,000 right there.
Yeah.
It's like Everett Dirksen, what is it? A million here, a billion here, a billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. Remember that, Brian?
I do.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, that we do, the price of gas and the price of oil have gone up, which has made the price of, pavement go up. So, even just budgeting the same as last year is not getting the same done. It's getting actually a chunk less done. And Ed has a list of everything that he wants to do and do all he can. So.
We used to drive the roads with Ed, and we stopped doing that, I guess, when we realized that hell of a lot of work out there.
You stopped doing it when Ed's kidneys gave out after driving over the roads.
Yeah, right. That's when we stopped. Well, they are. I know the road I live on, Moses Knott Road, was paved, half paved, just last week. And
Yeah,
I don't know what
yeah.
And that's only half of it, so I don't know.
Which half
Did
did
a
he
good
do?
job. Pardon me?
Which half did he do?
Bottom to my driveway. No, to Moses Knott Road up to the Jacobella Lane.
Okay, so in other words, from the bottom up, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is
the
by
only
far
person-
the worst.
But the only person that lives above there is Lee, so.
Well, there's something else. Maybe we could talk to the Park Service. I mean, it runs right through the Park Service. Maybe we get them involved with it.
It's true. You guys did look into the FLAP grant some time ago, federal land access program. That's a possibility.
Yeah, that's true. It's a
Yeah.
federal grant.
You're right.
I want to make sure I'm clear on how to proceed with a few things, but I also want to comment on some of the things we discussed here. So adding back in supervisor pay, about 39,000 additional in the budget. Taking out some of the insurance costs removes about 30,000 from the budget, so it almost evens out. If you said paving, if you said we need to do more paving and we can't cut paving, that's 60 more thousand. If you
Right.
said no amusement tax, that's 50 more thousand. If we said if we wanted to actually budget for capital expenditures, as we know we need to do in the future, that's a large. chunk
I
of
don't
it.
think we could afford to do that, but what would we need to, well, I'll let you keep.
Or a larger.
If we said, yeah, so, if we said, really it's probably 150,000 or 200,000 a year for capital reserves to then pay for our trucks and our roof when we need it and everything
Yeah.
else. But if you said instead of 20,000, we're putting aside 50,000, we need to then get those things I just listed. That's 170,000 extra dollars. So to get 170,000 extra dollars, we would need to, instead of do 1 mil, that's 1.27 mils. So that is
That's reality.
that's closer to reality. It's still not the capital reserves. It's closer to reality. Now are people upset by raising from 0.8 to 1.27 mils?
We're still gonna be upset. But I don't know what to do. You can't run this place.
This is the reality. This is
Puts us
And that-
above Paradise, less than Jackson.
it.
It doesn't run on a hope and a prayer.
Instead of being lower than 11 out of the 16 townships, we would be lower than 10 out of the 16 townships. So we're still lower than everybody by a crazy amount, but
We're still running a tight reserve, right?
yeah, still running a tight reserve if we're paying off the bond. But again, if we don't pay it off,
Yeah,
if we don't pay it off,
It doesn't
we
affect.
wouldn't use it for anything. We can say
Oh,
yeah.
the emergency.
we could use it for,
Right.
we can leave it aside for emergency only. So we could do exactly
Okay.
that. But I wouldn't say balance the fund with it because
Right.
it just.
no,
messes us up.
that seems reasonable, and then we can make that money work for us, so then we could still potentially look at, next year or the year after.
Yeah.
paying off. It
That would
all
be-
depends on where the market
That
goes, but
it would be fine to throw it in Pliget if we say we want extra reserves just in case. I'm not opposed to that at all.
yeah,
That would be fine. And that makes us feel comfortable with, we have emergency money if we need it, between our capital improvement fund, between that bond money set aside, between this. But we would, for balancing the budget purposes, that puts us at 1.27 mils. If the supervisors are in agreement that the amusement tax is not what you want to do.
By the way, just for the record, I don't play golf.
Me neither, Robert, me neither.
Do you need another budget meeting or just make even decide on your next public meeting?
But we do have one more budget meeting,
Right.
are
Oh,
already
okay.
scheduled.
that's November 9th at 10 a.m.
Okay.
No, that's November 9th at 10 a.m.
What is that, Jacob?
Correct.
Figure out the next.
The next budget meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, November 9th at 10 a.m.
Okay.
All
I
right.
mean, we can tighten it up, and Lucas, you can make these changes, and
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear on what my, changes are, because I could make these changes, but, these changes lead to 1.27 mils. Are those the changes that we are, supervisors are, agreeing on?
I'm gonna make it 1.3.
no,
So this is only putting $50,000 for capital reserves. The more you raise it, the more it goes for capital reserves, the more the better technically, but I understand that there's not a lot of appetite.
let's look at this for right now, and we'll,
Probably about $100 per house.
I actually did the calculation about 63 for $250,000.
so about $4 per month.
But so I can tell everyone the total tax. So if we raise it to 1.27, compared to the 0.8, the total additional is $119, depending on how you do the math, or $117. So either,
Should be about 100.
well, and that's
Lucas is 50 plus 163.
Right, oh, okay, Okay, I thought.
My apologies.
No, no, I was thinking.
Yeah, so it's the, the addition, it's additional of $118 per household if you go up to 1.27 mils. Next year, I'm okay saying, okay, capital reserves are at 20K, I was just starting the fund, or 50K, just starting the fund besides our grant expenditures. Knowing that when we have the real engineering plan from that's already budgeted for next year for the capital improvements, we would see that, okay, here's the exact amount we need, then we know exactly how much we need to raise in taxes. I can estimate now it's going to be 100K or 150K per year, and I can easily estimate that. But we want the exact amount and want to justify the
Yeah,
exact amount.
let's get the exact amounts based on what you're saying now and figure out the differences on the insurance and the other things that we're tightening up, and then we can attack it at our next meeting with that that in mind. We'll have new documents, and then we can decide, make some decisions and advertise.
Other comments?
All right. So November 9th at 10 a.m. We reconvene then. Do I hear?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Robert's making a motion to
Sure.
adjourn.
I'll
Second.
second that motion.
All in favor?
Hi,
Aye.
We
Brian.
adjourned 11:54.
Brian.
Yeah.
Brian,
Yes,
you
sir.
there? Isn't
Yeah.
the ninth Pam's birthday? Is it around there?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's
So
right.
are you gonna be with us or are you gonna be cutting cake?
Well, I don't know. Depends on what happens the day before.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
I might be sitting at the mini in the corner.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
See you at 6.
Hey, Robert, thanks for that reminder. Take care.
You too.